So we're continuing on in our last unit in this class, and part of what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how we're supposed to live. There are a billion different philosophies of life, right? Some of them are religions. Some of them are political ideologies. Others are, just based on common sense and intuition. Last class we looked at what makes a life meaningful. Wolff was trying to argue that, we should live a kind of life in which we are involved in activities that provide some sort of value to human existence. Activities that we are passionate about, that we're committed to, that hopefully we engage in somewhat successfully. Projects. Maybe it's writing a book. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's, inventing and creating something that's going to change humanity, if you're lucky and smart and have the money to do that. Well, we're going to look at a more specific philosophy of life today. And that is based actually on an American philosopher, somebody who has played a really influential role in the formation of New Age philosophy and this movement, this way of thinking that's known as Transcendentalism. Today we're looking at the philosophy of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I like teaching this guy because I think that there are a lot of optimistic things and ideas that we can draw from his work, which hopefully will help us lead these meaningful lives that Wolff is concerned about. That will hopefully allow us to endure the pain and suffering of human existence. But we'll see. We'll see if you agree. I'm going to start by giving you kind of a background on the general features of this guy's thought. Then we're going to we're going to synthesize some of the ideas that philosophers have discussed in regards to the human mind and how we interface with reality. And then finally, we're going to end the lecture by looking at what he has to say specifically in this essay on self-reliance, which is one of his most famous works. First, some background and historical context. Emerson and those that were influenced by him ended up contributing to the development of a certain strain of thought known as Transcendentalism. If you've ever heard about or discussed ideas that have to do with New Age philosophy and everything's one, man, we're all connected, that's kind of what Emerson is going to be talking about here. This is a school of thought that he ended up contributing to. And in the United States specifically, this transcendentalist philosophical school is one that has really taken hold in the minds of a lot of people, right? And saw a resurgence in the last few decades. We might characterize it as follows. Transcendentalism is a philosophical movement which stresses the goodness of nature and human beings, the corrupting nature of social institutions, and the importance of personal independence. So there are a lot of different pieces to what distinguishes this school of thought or movement from some of the other ideas that have taken a hold of the public consciousness throughout human history. let's just walk through some of the features of this school step by step. First, it stresses the inherent goodness of nature and human beings. If you have friends that are into New Age philosophy, or perhaps say something like, I'm spiritual, not religious, they usually mean something like this, or they believe something like this, which is, look, human beings by nature are not these evil, imperfect, terrible things. Like, human beings are fucking awesome. And we can do all these incredible things. Some go so far as to say that human beings are naturally good, right? Kind of like Rousseau. As we'll see, this kind of school of thought echoes a lot of the same ideas that Rousseau did, that we investigated in Unit 3. But it's going to say, human beings are these beautiful things. Nature is this wonderful thing. It is such a blessing. We should be grateful that we are able to participate in this awesome natural, cosmic, and biological system of which there are all these cool moving parts. These thinkers are also going to say that nature and human beings are connected in some kind of fundamental way. Which is why you'll see a lot of transcendentalists and New Age thinkers talking about the importance of spending time in nature, connecting with nature, having these religious or mystical experiences by interacting with natural phenomena. So, nature's cool. We should spend time in nature. Human beings and nature are in some fundamental way connected. Maybe there really is no ultimate distinction between these things. Maybe it's all part of one and the same underlying system. So that's the first feature. The second feature, the corrupting nature of social institutions. This was another thing that we saw in Rousseau's thought, right? Look around you today. Are the political and social institutions that we have making your life better, or are they making your life worse in some domains? If Rousseau is to be believed, the kinds of norms and social policies and laws that humans have, they're corrupting us, right? They're making us ambitious and greedy and narcissistic and mean. The Transcendentalists are going to say something similar. Education is messed up. The fact that we've organized human life around economic production and consumption, fucked up. We all need to take a chill pill, okay? These things in our lives on which modern human society is based, like industrialism, and perhaps they'd even go so far as to critique our two-political party system, the way our politics works generally. They're going to say these things are messed up, okay? They are corrupting influences in people's lives. Finally, one more thing. The importance of personal independence. This is going to be a big one for Emerson that we're really going to hone in on today. A big message that Transcendentalism tries to get across is this idea that you actually have a lot more power over your own happiness and fulfillment than you may realize. Yes, the social institutions that we are a part of are corrupting influences, and they lead people astray and all these different things, but we are not mere victims to these social and economic circumstances. As we'll see, one of the main issues that the Transcendentalists have with how people are living out their lives is that they externalize their happiness and their locus of control. The Transcendentalists are going to say things like, happiness is within you. All you have to do is grab it. It depends on how you are oriented in this life. Your state of mind, the way that you perceive the world, what all of this stuff means to you is something that you have a lot of control over. So you shouldn't base your happiness and your fulfillment on things that are outside of you, like wealth or property or the opinions of others. Happiness and fulfillment is something to be found within, something that you can cultivate yourself, provided you cultivate the proper mindset, the proper mode of being, okay? One that they're going to stress should be spiritual, self-reflective, introspective, and one which tries to, strengthen our capacities, our mental and our spiritual capacities. That's basically a short introduction to this view. Again, it's connected to New Age philosophy. It is kind of a school of thought that a lot of people believe in nowadays, especially those who have had negative experiences with organized religion, at least in the U.S. Another thing that the Transcendentalists are going to emphasize is that mystical, meaningful experiences are not localized to church services or ayahuasca ceremonies or taking a heroic dose of mushrooms. Okay? They're going to imply things like these transcendental experiences in which we connect with the oneness of the universe are everyday occurrences available to us if we search within. We can connect with the oneness of being, with God, with nature, whatever you want to call it, with divine consciousness, through our own mind, through our own spirit. We don't need to jump through all of these religious and ritualistic hoops in order to do it. In some fundamental sense, all that exists manifests or constitutes some kind of unity. So you might hear, all is one, man, and something like that. There's that kind of idea in this school of thought. What this implies is that there's some sort of special connection between consciousness and nature, or between consciousness and the universe. So we are able to connect with the oneness of the universe, or the ground of being, or whatever you want to call it, through our own consciousness. And we can come to understand better the nature of this reality through introspection and reflection and this intuition and revelation. Whereas a lot of modern philosophy and even forms of religion like Christianity might posit a dualistic idea right? Which is that there's a distinction between what is physical and what is spiritual, what is, material and mental. There's a difference between the body and the soul, and these are two separate things. The Transcendentalists are not going to agree with that. They're going to say physical and spiritual phenomena are dynamically interconnected. Positing this difference or this distinction in which they're two totally different things produces more problems and confusions. These are not easily separable phenomena. Why? Because everything is all connected in some fundamental way. Which is why if we engage in certain modes of thought and being, we can come to knowledge of what the hell all of this is and how it works and what it means. And we can attune ourselves to the flow and operations of the universe. The problem is that through social conditioning, education, all these different concepts and ideas that we are spoon-fed since the time that we are young, it has confused us about the nature of all of this stuff and how it is connected, and about what is truly meaningful in human life. Happiness and fulfillment, the Transcendentalists are going to argue, is not to be found in material things, possessions, power, wealth. It is to be found within. Because by going within, you are able to connect yourself to the fundamental unity of the universe. Emerson is one of the pioneers of this way of thinking. What we're going to see in his essay today, Self-Reliance, is we're going to see some of these themes pop up, but more particularly, we're going to see him stress how important it is to live a radically, spiritually individualistic life. What he's going to try to persuade us of is the power and the security and the fulfillment that comes from cultivating trust in yourself, from strengthening and furthering your capacities, from developing self-reliance. Hence the title of the essay. So your happiness and fulfillment is not something that is going to be found in how we are kind of socially and economically conditioned to think and live. In some sense, what we need to do in order to live out our best lives is divorce ourselves from all of this stuff that doesn't matter, all of these concepts and ideas that are holding us back. And so he's going to stress in this essay that to truly find happiness and fulfillment, we need to spiritually connect with nature, recognize in some sense that we are all a part of this fundamental unity, and we need to stop externalizing our happiness. Make sense? I know this sounds kind of woo-woo and stuff, but maybe by the end you'll see that even if it's a little weird, maybe there are some cool little gems of wisdom and interestingness to be found. Okay, let's now transition to some of the fundamental ideas that are going to underlie this kind of life that Emerson thinks that is going to be fulfilling for humans to live. I don't want you to think that Emerson is necessarily trying to convince you to live this way, and he's saying objectively this is the best way to live. He recognizes that he's only speaking from his own personal experience. So just keep that in the back of your minds. But see if, as we go through the latter half of this lecture, if you connect with any of this, if you vibe with it. If what Emerson is saying is true, if we do have more control over our own happiness and fulfillment than we think we do, some things about the mind and consciousness would have to be true. Some things about what it means to be a human being would have to be true. Let's start with an idea that we see pop up in a lot of different philosophical works, and something that has even become perhaps a fundamental presupposition of progressive politics today. We see this partly in critical theory. We see this in the philosophy of Soren Kierkegaard. We see it in the philosophy of Emerson. All our perceptions, our thoughts, our feelings, beliefs, and theories are filtered through personal experience and through our own unique subjectivity. Or you might say filtered through our own mind. There is no view from nowhere. Have y'all ever heard of this phrase, the view from nowhere? It's one that the philosopher Thomas Nagel talks about. I believe Roger Scruton talked about it too. This idea that we can embody a completely objective point of view outside of the phenomena that we're looking at and analyze it completely objectively without any bias, without it being colored by our personal experiences or thoughts, is something that a lot of thinkers don't think is possible. Okay? Bless you. Why? Well, look, you have your own unique way of looking at the world, your own subjectivity. Nobody knows what it's like to be you, right? You feel things, you experience pain and suffering, joy and loss. We can communicate to others through words, but nobody's ever going to be able to know what it's like for you when you take a nice sip of the toasted milk chocolate Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Right? You don't know what that taste is like to me. Yes? And I don't know what the pain of pinching your skin feels like to you. So we all kind of have our own unique, impenetrable perspectives on the world. The way that we understand reality, the way that we feel about things, how we perceive things, they're going to be based in part on the inherent structures of our own minds. So it's not possible for us to view the universe outside of our own minds, right? It's like we are stuck in here and we're stuck seeing the world from this vantage point. Thus, what that seems to imply is what we think, say, and do is necessarily going to be colored by our past experiences, our beliefs, our biases, whatever it is. This reveals to us an interesting feature of the human mind. And human behavior. What some of the Transcendentalists, including Emerson, thinks this reveals, and this has been investigated in other philosophical works, is that human thought and life in general depend on intuition and faith in these different ways. This is kind of a deep, complex idea, but let me try to make it a little bit more accessible. Although we are rational creatures, we have the ability to reason and reflect and follow a chain of logic through to its conclusion. Is your life and your actions fundamentally based in reasoning, in rational justification for things, in logical arguments? We try to justify our arguments and our views to others, but in order for you to move and act in the world, do you rely always on logical arguments and rational justifications? I mean, no. Like when you eat your dinner at night, you're not thinking, rationally speaking, there could be glass in here. I better check that. No, you just eat your dinner, right? You trust, you have faith that there's not glass in the meal that you ordered from the restaurant. Logically speaking, as soon as you walk out your door, a piano could fall on you, and you could just die. Are you worried about that? No, you leave your dorm and you're upset, because you got to wake up early, and you just run out there, right? Or maybe stumble out there if you're a little tired. Your life and your actions are not based on all these rational arguments and justifications, okay? You have some sort of faith that the world is going to continue operating as it always has. The laws of nature are not fundamentally going to change. A piano isn't going to fall out of the sky and drop on you on a random Wednesday morning. And what's interesting about, rational justification of our beliefs, of our worldviews, is that fundamentally at bottom, a lot of thinkers don't believe that it's actually possible for us to rationally justify our foundational beliefs or a lot of our worldviews, or a lot of the axioms on which our lives depend. Think about it like this. What did we look at in the first unit? We looked at two theories of knowledge, right? Empiricism and rationalism. Empiricism said, well, the way that we primarily obtain knowledge of the universe around us is through our senses, right? Look, I know there's a table here because I can touch it, I feel it, right? I can see the chalk. I know there's a piece of chalk there. Rationalism said, no, that's not primarily how we understand all this and know it. It's something that our mind is doing, right? Our logical or our reasoning capacity. Well, let me ask you this. Can you ever know with absolute certainty that your sense organs are working properly? Can you ever know with certainty that the machinery of your mind is actually working so you can come to truth? How could anybody know that, right? You're like stuck in here, right? You can't look at it from the outside. You're in this thing. So, when you make arguments, when you claim to have knowledge, when you justify your beliefs, you have to presuppose that your rational faculties are working properly, that your senses are working properly, although you could never prove these things to yourself or other people. So it would seem that all of our worldviews, our beliefs, our arguments are like presumed to be authoritative. Because we can't prove that my eyes are working properly all the time such that I can apprehend truth and express it to you. We can't ultimately justify that, yes, I know for a fact that my faculties that allow me to apprehend reality are working right. We just kind of have to have faith that they do. This isn't something that we can prove to ourselves or others. So it would seem that so much of our lives is self-authorized. We have faith that our sense organs are working correctly. We have faith that our reasoning is working right so we can figure stuff out and solve problems. The Transcendentalists are going to kind of latch on to this. Maybe not explicitly, but this is going to be one of the features of their thought. Because we can't ultimately logically justify everything to ourselves or others, instead of relying on empiricism or rationalism, for knowledge they're going to say we should be relying on our own personal intuitions, our own revelations of the way that reality is like. Thus, there's going to be an emphasis on personal experience in this philosophy. In some sense, because you are a part of this oneness of the universe and you are directly connected to it, you can apprehend the way the universe works and is through your personal experience, because you are kind of like the universe experiencing itself. This implies a lot of interesting things about our lives and our happiness and our fulfillment. What the Transcendentalists and the Existentialists are going to say, as we'll see in a few class periods, is that a great deal of what all of this means to us, of how all of this feels, of how we interpret it, is under our control. In other words, insofar as our mind is what is interfacing with reality, and our mind is malleable, we have a good deal of control over our own personal happiness and fulfillment, because we can change our perspective. We can change over time what our beliefs are, what we value. In other words, the Transcendentalists are going to say, we are not the helpless victims of life. We can become the helpless victims of life if we externalize our happiness and assume that everything's out to get us and assume that we don't have any control over our situation. But they're saying that's not the truth. You have more control over your own personal happiness and fulfillment than you think. And this is something that we also see echoed in a lot of Eastern philosophies as well. Buddhism or Taoism. They're going to insinuate that your personal salvation, happiness, and fulfillment is in large part downstream from how you interpret and orient yourself with respect to all of this. You can find joy in poverty. You can find salvation despite the fact that there's suffering all around you. One of the things that we see implied in this view and existentialism is this idea, and this is something that is really worth internalizing. Ready? You are not equivalent to your thoughts and feelings. You are the thing that's watching those things or having those things. Okay? This is worth meditating on. You are that awareness or perspective that is checking these things out, but you are not equivalent to your trauma. You're not equivalent to your anger that you feel, or the joy that you feel, or the loss that you experience. You might feel angry in the moment, upset, insecure, uncomfortable. But those feelings and thoughts do not define you. They do not capture you. You're something beyond that. You're something more than that. And insofar as you're something more than that, who is, just moving through these waters or moving through these states, you have some sort of control over how you respond to them and how much they influence your life and therefore your happiness and fulfillment. Because you've undergone a long process of education and socialization, you've come to have certain values and beliefs about the world, right? Certain theories about how the world works, who's in power, what's happening. But what we see in this transcendentalist school, and again in existentialism, is an insistence on the free will of human beings when it comes to not only action out in the world, but also over the operations of our own minds. In some fundamental sense, it seems to be true that what we value, believe, and subscribe to is dependent on our own wills. You might be an atheist, or you might be a Christian. You might be a liberal, or a progressive, or a conservative, or a communist. But these beliefs and values that you have are not like completely concrete. If you're an atheist and you want to become a Christian, you want to like form that belief in God, I bet you $1 million you could do it if you just go to church every day for the next 3 years and you read the Bible. Similarly, if you're a Christian and you want to become an atheist, you could do that. It would take time. It's not like flipping a light switch, but you could change what you believe by engaging in certain behaviors and placing yourself in certain environments. You could also probably change a lot of what you politically or socially value. And even though this seems crazy, it seems untrue, just think about this. Had you grown up in a different environment, wouldn't you have different beliefs and values? If you're a progressive and you were raised in the Christian Deep South, wouldn't you have Christian beliefs and values? And vice versa? If you were raised in San Francisco by a gay couple or something? So, what does all this mean? Well, what the Transcendentalists are trying to get us to see, in some sense, is we have more control over our own happiness and fulfillment than we think we do. Because we have this tremendous power or ability to alter our own minds, to alter how we see the world and how we interpret it, and to control how we respond to what life throws at us. So, if we want to be happy and fulfilled people, what Emerson is going to say is cultivate self-reliance. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to go within yourself to find and cultivate happiness. Don't base your happiness on the shit out there that is subject to change. Don't base your happiness on the opinions of others, or on these social institutions, or on these people. You need to cultivate some sort of relationship with yourself. That is what this philosophy is fundamentally about. And so, to cap this off, let's just go over some of what Emerson has to say in this essay. One of the first things that he notes is a very Rousseauian point, which we've already mentioned, which is, in a very real sense, the development of our societies, of our institutions, our politics, scientific and technological advancement, this stuff has actually made humans weaker and more unhappy in certain ways. And perhaps it's made us dumber in some ways as well. Look at how much our human life depends on the digital infrastructure that we've built up. This is something that we saw in Duluth, right? Now all of our electrical grids, all our money, our economies are, based on these digital technologies. Nobody can get a job without an email now. At some places, if you want to buy something, you need a card. They don't even accept cash. In some way, the way that our society has technologically advanced and developed to depend on these technologies, that has made human beings less independent. Now we are dependent on these policies and this infrastructure and these systems, right? How many of you know survival skills? If this all fell apart, would you be able to survive? Do you know how to grow a potato? Start a fire in the woods? Emerson was seeing this during his own time. He's like, this technology stuff, it's making people less independent and self-reliant. There's a worry here, okay? Although science and technology has allowed us to do a lot of amazing things, our dependence on them is not a good thing. They're good and useful tools, but humans started to go astray a little bit when we started to change our societies to be dependent on these, insecure things. Although our lives have a lot of convenience now, and look, we could buy coffee from Colombia on Amazon and have it shipped to us in 2 days. While that's cool, leaning into this kind of way of life in which the money that we make, our livelihoods, our health is dependent on all of these things external to us, it's dependent on these systems that we don't have control over and that we don't really understand. That's not good. Now, and perhaps this has only gotten worse over the last 2 centuries, humans are less independent, self-reliant, and resilient. At least, let's say, in Western developed worlds, right? We don't have the knowledge, the capacities, or perhaps the characters to survive if all of this was to come crashing down. That's not a good thing. Externalizing what makes us happy and what allows us to live and what we find meaning in is not a good move. Instead, what Emerson thinks we should be doing is strengthening our capacities, developing a relationship with ourselves, making ourselves, better in some sense, more knowledgeable, resilient, strong, not basing our lives or our happiness on what others think or what our parents want or anything like that. But what the hell do you want? Have you thought about that? What is your relationship like to your inner self? Do you love yourself? Are you confident in your skin? Or do you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, God, that's an ugly motherfucker? What Emerson thinks that, we should be doing, at least what's working for him, is learning to express ourselves authentically and individually, and to put trust in our own thoughts and abilities. Because you do have something to share with the world. Your own unique perspective and your views. You have a unique living spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it, inside of you that is different from everybody else. So open and honest communication is going to be extremely important in order for you to live the kind of happy, fulfilled life that you're looking for. In order to tell others how you feel, in order to say, hey, there's some shitty stuff right over here. Everybody look at that, you know? Too many people are alienated from themselves, from their own unique thoughts and desires, dreams and wishes. We need to develop a relationship with ourselves, one that is strong, secure, independent. Society conditions us to conform and to think like everybody else and to want what everybody else wants. It encourages us, incentivizes us to forsake our own individuality, right? God forbid you say something that disagrees politically with a member of your friend group, you'd be crucified, right? Or God forbid you express your own opinion on social media, get ready to get ratioed, right? Too often we have externalized our happiness, our security, our own value. We come to value ourselves if others value us, right? We come to have security and confidence if others tell us we look good and we're cool. We base our happiness on the opinions of others, of what goals our parents have for us, or our grandparents, or our other family members. It is not good that we are basing our security, our value, on external things, on other people, on these systems, on these possessions, whatever. Emerson thinks that only self-mastery and self-reliance will grant us the security, resolve, and happiness that we are seeking. Because all the stuff that is outside of you, these economic systems, the possessions, the opinions of others, this shit is constantly changing and it's in flux. It's a losing strategy to base your happiness on other people's opinions, because other people, they don't know what the hell they think or what they want, and it's always changing, right? One moment your boyfriend loves you, and the next moment he's mad because you looked at him funny. You're like, what the fuck? So, what we need to do, according to this view, we need to cultivate a powerful, authentic relationship with our own unique self. We need to learn to, well, get a handle on those thoughts and feelings that we're having that are causing us pain, that are based on these things that don't matter, that we can't control. You can't control what people think about you. You can't control how the economy is going to do, who gets elected president. You know what you can control? What goes on in here. How you feel about yourself. Whether or not you see yourself as beautiful and powerful. So far as we base our happiness, our security, our value on things outside of us, that's always going to be a risk. And it's probably not going to allow us to cultivate the fulfilled life that we are seeking. It can't be any other way. Because, think about it like this. You base your happiness on things outside of you. You know who ultimately decides whether or not, you interpret something as good or bad and therefore have a positive or negative emotion about it? It's you. Like, whether you realize it or not, like, you are the arbiter of like how you feel and respond to things. Nobody else has control over how you think and feel but you. Emerson says, in like manner, the reformers summon conventions and vote and resolve in multitude. Not so, O friends, will the God deign to enter and inhabit you, but by a method precisely the reverse. It is only as a man puts off all foreign support, external stuff, and stands alone, that I see him to be strong and to prevail. He is weaker by every recruit to his banner. Is not a man better than a town? Ask nothing of men, and in the endless mutation, thou only firm column must presently appear the upholder of all that surrounds thee. He who knows that power is inborn, that he is weak because he has looked out for good out of him and elsewhere, and so perceiving throws himself unhesitatingly on his thought, instantly rights himself, stands in the erect position, commands his limbs, works miracles, just as a man who stands on his feet is stronger than a man who stands on his head. So use all that is called fortune. Most men gamble with her, and gain all, and lose all, as her wheel rolls. But do thou leave as unlawful these winnings, and deal with cause and effect, the chancellors of God. In the will, work and acquire, and thou hast chained the wheel of chance, and shalt sit hereafter out of fear from her rotations. A political victory, a rise of rents, the recovery of your sick or the return of your absent friend, or some other favorable event raises your spirits, and you think good days are preparing for you. Do not believe it. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of your principles. So, we shouldn't seek to just be like everybody else. We shouldn't base our happiness on things outside of us. We shouldn't just accept what everybody has to tell us, believe what everybody says is right and true and good. We should seek to become stronger, wiser, more comfortable with ourselves, perhaps more loving to ourselves. And we should seek to live in the present moment, not schizophrenically in the past or in the future. Worrying endlessly about the past or the future is no way to live. The past is gone. The future does not yet exist. Maybe all that exists is the eternal now in which we persist. For we all participate in this unity of the universe. We all participate in the same oneness that is nature or God or whatever you want to call it. Transcendentalists are known for being pantheistic. Does anybody know what pantheism is? Equating God with nature. Like, oh, all of that is God, become one with God. We're all connected to this thing. We're all a part of this thing. And so, if we can connect ourselves inwardly through that which unites all of us, life, being, consciousness, we will be able to develop some kind of security and fulfillment that those who base their happiness on outward things will not be able to get. And so I'll end you with this. This is the ultimate fact which we so quickly reach on this, as on every topic, the resolution of all into the ever-blessed One. Self-existence is the attribute of the supreme cause, God, and it constitutes the measure of good by the degree in which it enters into all lower forms. All things real are so by so much virtue as they contain. Commerce, husbandry, hunting, whaling, war, eloquence, personal weight, are somewhat, and engage my respect as examples of its presence in impure action. I see the same law working in nature for conservation and growth. Power is in nature the essential measure of right. Nature suffers nothing to remain in her kingdoms which cannot help itself. The genesis and maturation of a planet, its poise and orbit, the bended tree recovering itself from the strong wind, the vital resources of every animal and vegetable are demonstrations of the self-sufficing and therefore the self-relying soul. Thus, all concentrates. Let us not rove. Let us sit at home with the cause. Let us stun and astonish the intruding rabble of men and books and institutions by a simple declaration of divine fact. Bid the invaders take the shoes from off their feet, for God is here within. Let our simplicity judge them, and our docility to our own law demonstrate the poverty of nature and fortune beside our native riches. To end on a spiritual woo-woo note, all you got to do is look within. You just got to connect to that God that you are a part of, man. That's it. All right, go take some mushrooms. No. Okay, is this weird? Is this crazy? Do you like some of it? What do you think? Yeah?
I like some of it. It is kind of crazy, I guess.
It's kind of weird, yeah.
I like the point about like the technology part, but that's also mostly because I'm writing a research paper kind of about that same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to know that like even like in the 19th century, people were still noticing that. Like,
look at the Luddites, who famously destroyed pieces of technology because they were worried it would take over their jobs, and it has, and it will.
like they didn't even have phones back then.
Yeah, they were worried about mechanical looms and things. Look at the machines that we have now. Insane. Okay, so you like that part.
Yeah, but that's only just because it relates to my paper that I'm writing.
Okay.
I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna throw that in there.
What do the rest of y'all think? Is this worth anything, or are you just like, jibber jabber?
I agree with the part about science and technology, about how the technology has made us a little, weaker and are more dependent on it.
I would not be able to survive in the forest by myself.
Literally.
Maybe that's not good. I don't know.
It's like I have no sense of direction either. Like when I drive somewhere, I can't even. I have to look at my phone.
Are you dependent on Google Maps?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Spelling too. I can't spell without my phone.
A lot of people can't do math without a calculator. Yeah. Okay, what do the rest of y'all think? Are you vibing with this? Yeah?
I think that the focus on self is really cool. Like, I think it makes sense that, like, we gotta look inside.
Yeah.
But I also don't know how to, like, have that conversation with myself because I've been reliant on external factors for so long.
So, yeah, where do you start?
Yeah.
Maybe hire a Gestalt psychotherapist?
Yeah.
Process some of those emotions and trauma that are buried deep within your subconscious? That's really scary, though. Who wants to do that? Who wants to confront their shadow? Yeah.
Okay, I've started to do that though, and I think it actually helps when you journal about your childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Also, okay,
A lot of people would agree. Yeah.
I started saying positive affirmations to myself every day. I leave them with little sticky notes all over my apartment, and
Yeah.
I think they make me feel better, whether it's fake or not. I don't know, because I feel like trying to have a career in the arts is really scary and kind of shitty. And going into senior year, everything would just get my mood down. But then I started to tell myself everything's gonna be fine. You're awesome. And I think it works, whether it's fake or not.
If it works, right? Why do humans do what they do? Because it does something for them, right? Who cares, if people think it's silly? Yeah, leave a little note on your bathroom mirror. You're beautiful. Maybe it'll help. I don't know. Doesn't help me, but yeah. What do the rest of y'all think? Any closing thoughts, ideas? Yeah.
I feel like it can kind of encourage selfishness.
Okay.
The idea of you're completely self-reliant. I think that's good, and being able to do things yourself is good. But society, as we live in, kind of depends on other people, and if you don't depend on other people, you're kind of excluded or a hermit. And
Right.
It just makes the way our societies work harder if we want to get anything done, as well as develop social programs that care for other people.
Right.
So in that aspect, I'm not a huge fan of that idea.
So that is one of the same issues that we ran into with Aristotle's virtue theory, right? Maybe the ideal is self-mastery and self-reliance, becoming a stronger person, facing your fears, right? Overcoming your own limitations and encouraging people to do so. Maybe that's a good thing. But we do have social and economic problems, right, that are not going to be solved by that. Look, you're going to tell the homeless person to, hey, keep your chin up when they don't have any food or a house. Does that serve anybody? Does that actually help them? Doesn't seem like this is going to solve all of our problems, right? At least not our social problems. Yeah.
I do think he's right that it's better for yourself to be self-reliant, but I also think that it's not necessarily going to make you selfish to try and be self-reliant and kind of not use others to get your opinions. But I think sometimes when you're always anxious about what other people think of you and trying to get them to like you, you're also kind of being selfish in that like you're only thinking about other people in terms of like how they can make you feel better. And
Right.
maybe if you can like help yourself to become a good person, then you're capable of interacting with people without like just trying to like get something out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain kind of narcissism that goes along with constantly being worried about how other people perceive you and how you are interpreted. Right? Here's some real talk. There's a certain kind of narcissism with being so preoccupied with your own thoughts and feelings. Now that's a paradox, right? Because it's like, well, they're my thoughts and feelings. Of course I'm going to be concerned about them. But maybe we could have a measured dose of what Wolf said in the last lecture, which is we need to recognize the mereness of our subjectivity and that life is bigger than any one of us. And that there are things that are valuable and worth pursuing outside of, well, our own satisfaction. But that's something you can meditate on.